Is Monster Hunter becoming too easy, too dumbed down, too newbie compromised, too friendly? Get ready for quite a few hot takes from the player community on this particular issue as Monster Hunter Wilds navigates its post-launch existence. There's one thing that I keep seeing with every new core series Monster Hunter game and expansion that's come into existence while I have been paying attention to the series at least. Hello again, I am Blunty, and I'm already seeing this stuff start to bubble and curdle out of the Monster Hunter community corners about Wilds. The opinion that the Monster Hunter games are just getting easier and easier. Too easy, as a matter of fact. And people wishing the games were more hardcore difficult, more newbie hostile, more unapproachable and esoteric, like they used to be. When a player could feel, more special about playing this underground game before it was mainstream. And the problem is, it's kind of a ridiculous fiction that people invent for themselves. It's a lie they tell themselves because they don't have enough self-awareness. And it's something that deeply frustrates a large chunk of the fandom. It certainly does me, and it's one of those game fandom debates that keeps repeating itself over and over and over again with each new game. Even IGN, with their corporate-filtered lukewarm takes and Capcom-approved IGN-first content, have approached this issue in the last few days. IGN First, which, while not sponsored content in the traditional sense where they legally have to tell you they've been paid by the game publisher to make the content, still is absolutely, make no doubt about it, trading valuable first-mover exclusivity and privileged access in exchange for positive, pre-approved, Capcom-stamped content devoid of any actual serious criticism. This stuff should always be taken with a grain of salt, or a bucket, in fact. But in the final video of the Monster Hunter Wilds first stuff, focused coverage in a series for January, they spent a shockingly large chunk of the editorial's runtime, they called it a preview, trying to break down this common hot take that the IGN author is clearly as exhausted by as many of us are. It was refreshing, frankly. When speaking of the difficulty curve in their final pre-launch preview access, where they did play about 5 hours, they said, of the opening of the full-featured game, and a few more hours of more carefully curated high-rank hunt experiences, they had this to say. I beelined it through the story to make sure I could see everything I could, and in doing so I crafted and upgraded only what I could. In my minimal preparation, I hunted the first 7 monsters and then a repel quest for the Leviathan Duna without much trouble and never once hearted. So, I've seen that particular quote raise some eyebrows already, with some people seeing it as evidence that the game is in fact too easy, and that they're scared they won't be feeling challenged enough in the opening of the game at least, or for many more hours of core progress throughout the game. But funnily enough, the IGN writer very closely mirrored some of the stuff I had already myself written, sitting in a draft for a video script of my own, some of which I'll recycle for later in this video. But for now, I'll use their words. They continued. When I played Monster Hunter World for the very first time, even Toby Kadachi gave me trouble, and I was surprised to encounter such little friction while playing Wilds. And indeed, I think many of us share that experience, right? In World, Toby Kadachi was certainly the first thing that ever carted me in World when I first picked it up. He's a big switch up, much faster and much more mobile than anything else we had fought so far. And it came with the first serious status effect to deal with. You could get stunned, you could get locked down, you had to learn how to deal with that. Which is why Toby's there at that point in the game, to teach new hunters how to adapt to these things, how to adapt to faster, more mobile monsters, how to adapt to status effects. For some players, he is the first of what the player base usually calls wall monsters. Things you'll have to smash up against several times before figuring out and being able to break through it and move on past the wall. For me, Toby was, I think, 2 cards the very first time I faced him, but no true quest fails my first time through. But that was only the first time I faced him. We'll get to the repeat fights a little bit later in the video. But the IGN video continues. I was actually so surprised that when I went back and replayed the story in Monster Hunter World through Anjanath, the 7th large monster, the answer is, I've just gotten a whole lot better since I first played World, even though by that point I had been playing Monster Hunter since the very first one on PlayStation 2. I easily ripped through everything in World up to Anjanath, who then made me sweat a bit before I defeated it on my first try. And again, I think that is a common experience for many people in World as well, with Tobi-Kadachi being a teaching experience in low-rank World, and Anjanath being kind of the first real test, the final exam, if you will, to see if you're ready to move on. And again, for many players, Anjanath was their first true wall monster. I certainly remember my excitement the first time I faced him. But given that, you might expect the same kind of structure, the same kind of experience in Wilds, with a Tobi-like monster and an Anjanath-like monster sitting in the first few hours to teach you and then test you. At least enough to cut once or twice, to humble you a little bit, to make you buckle down, to learn. If not outright get your ears kicked in and fail a quest for the first time. But, however, then, if you've ever actually replayed World, started a new save, chances are pretty good you'll fairly easily glide past Tobi and Anjanath far, far easier than you did the first time. And you'll probably sit there and think to yourself, well, that was easy. It's probably because I already learnt these fights. They've got nothing new to teach me now. I know how to fight them. I can pass this test easy. I know what the answers are. Seems sensible, right? But then Rise released, and once again, I'll read what IGN had to say, because, well, it's damn close to what I had already written in my draft, and multiple perspectives on this help drive the point I'm trying to make home. It's funny, because I felt the same when I played Monster Hunter Rise, and I thought to myself, this feels so much easier, and in some ways this could be because of the fun zippy wire bug mechanic and other factors. But that feeling was largely due to my increased skill as a player after 600 hours in World and Iceborne. That's not to say I'm now some pro hunter, I'm certainly not a speedrunner, but I've improved enough to notice. And I'm bringing this up because I often see this lamentation in the community questioning perhaps, is Monster Hunter simply getting easier? I would suggest that we may just be growing into better hunters. And that's what this is. When people claim successive games are getting easier because they're not hitting walls as early in the game as they used to, even if they're fighting brand new monsters they've never faced before in brand new ways with brand new game mechanics, or otherwise trying a new weapon they're otherwise inexperienced with. They think the game is easier because they haven't really noticed that they're just a better hunter now. It's not necessarily true that the game is easier. Because while being good, like properly good at Monster Hunter, absolutely requires that you learn each individual monster carefully, its behavior, its patterns, its weaknesses, its openings and tactics, where you can punish, where you have to retreat and wait. There's also an underlying skill set through the game's more low-level systems. See, the difference is you've already learned how to learn a monster in a more intuitive, efficient way. You know the kinds of things you need to look for. You know what your tools are, what to start looking for, and what is usually the best way to adapt to certain things, even the first time you see them. And so for even those relatively new to the series who came in with World, and maybe they didn't even burn down the end game, or maybe they didn't even play Iceborne, when they came to play Rise, despite its noticeable differences and some combat gameplay mechanics, it may have just felt less challenging simply because they were better at learning the game. But you watch someone truly new to Monster Hunter Rise play this game that you think is noticeably easy, and you'll see them hit the same kinds of walls that Tobi-Kadachi and Anjanath might have presented you in World if you were a new player there. Arknosom is probably the Tobi equivalent here. He's fast, he's pouncy, he's less obviously predictable than previous monsters. He's got some wacky animations that telegraph moves you might not recognize straight out of the gate. And he has some serious elemental attacks you'll need to learn about and learn how to deal with. And I have seen many new players absolutely doinked by him, while more experienced hunters, despite never having fought this brand new monster who made his debut in Rise, easily dispatch him. Because he's only a 3-star low rank at this point, and even if you don't know this particular monster, you know how to learn monsters. Then Barriath in Rise is probably roughly where Anjanath was in World. He's fast, he's elemental, and much harder hitting, and again, new players will likely get spanked by him, while people who've played World won't be nearly as threatened. Indeed, even though I had played World before Rise, this fellow still was a bit of an issue for me the first time through Rise. And if I'm honest with you, I've never gotten properly good at fighting the bugger in any rank. Just one of those problem monsters for me. Don't know why. And just a couple of weeks ago, I did a kind of farewell for now playthrough of Rise and Sunbreak, starting a fresh new save and playing all the way through to endgame of Sunbreak. And for the base game, I used Hunting Horn, as I did for my very first playthrough of Rise back in the day. Man, Hunting Horn is so much fun in Rise, it's ridiculous. But because I'm such a better, more experienced hunter now than I was even at Rise launch, to help make it feel more challenging so it was more fun, especially while ploughing through the village quests and low rank hub quests, I did so utterly nude, no armor at all. And to make myself laugh, because I was playing nude and playing with the hunting horn, I called it the Nude and Horny run. But I still burned through it super easy. Not even Magna Marlow posed a threat. A few hunts into high rank and I started becoming vulnerable to being 1 or 2 tapped if I was too careless around certain attacks. And because I was doing multiplayer hunts in high rank, because frankly, I find the extra chaos multiple hunters generate a lot more fun. I didn't want to accidentally let the team down by being carelessly carted because I wasn't wearing armor. It seemed irresponsible when you're in rando multiplayer hunts to go in nude like that. So I decided to try something else I've never done before in any Monster Hunter game. I went full wide-range Mushroom Mancer. A long way from what you'd call the most efficient use of armor skill slots, but between that playstyle and the hunting horn, I was playing in a way I had never played before. A super fun way to say goodbye to Rise. By the time I got to Sunbreak, I switched over to Switch Axe, just as I did when Sunbreak first arrived. But I stuck with Mushroom Mancer, except this time I went with an even further restriction of only wearing a fully matched set of armor. And if you want a matched set and you want Mushroom Mancer, that is a significantly more heavily limited set of choices. And while all of this was really super fun and made certain parts of what became a 90-hour playthrough a lot more hours than I originally planned to put through on this, farewell tour, playing all the way through to endgame Sunbreak, it made it, much more challenging again than it would have been if I was truly, even vaguely min-maxing my playstyle and armor skills for the best DPS or best elemental damage or status or survivability or whatever. I still only counted a few times, I think maybe 5 or 6 times total throughout the entire playthrough, and I only ever failed a quest completely when someone else in Monster Hunter caused it. And this isn't because Sunbreak's endgame is easy. It's simply because I'm better at the game now. Especially Risebreak, where I have literally thousands of cumulative hours across 3 platforms and I think 7 different playthrough saves at this point. But I've done similar things in World too, which was the game that first taught me Monster Hunter, a game some, if not most, would consider the harder of the 5th gen games. Yes, most people, which is harder, World or Rise, they're probably going to say World. It's debatable, but whatever. But in World 2, I've done challenge playthrough with heavy restrictions and rule sets or completely armorless runs, and here too I can demonstrate how much better I am than I was. And that's the point I'm trying to drive at here. I'm not sitting here trying to brag about being some super awesome, unstoppable elite hunter, because I'm not. I'm just not. I still make silly mistakes all the time. I overcommit. I lock myself into animations when I really shouldn't. I get punished for it. But, that's the fun for me. Anyway, I'm not trying to be a faultless, hyper-efficient, mathematically optimized speedrunner type guy. Doing that sucks the fun out of the game from my perspective. I get why people like doing that, but I don't like doing that. I just want to have fun, and at some point, playing deliberately suboptimally with self-imposed restrictions and rule sets and limits becomes the super fun way to play. So when it comes to Wilds and its difficulty or perceived difficulty, depending on your own perspective, because it's all relative, given my significant playtime in older games now, you won't hear me complain about it feeling too easy, even though it probably will be pretty easy for me. That's fine by me. I want the game to have a relatively gentle learning curve, to have its Tobi Kadachi and its Arknasom low-rank teachers, and its Anjanath and Barioth exam tests, and its low-rank Nergiganti and Magna Marlow equivalents, and its Diablos. Even if the first encounters with these various difficulty spikes doesn't feel as threatening to me as they once might have. Personally, I don't want these kinds of encounters tuned to test experienced hunters, long-time players. I don't want this game to feel unwelcoming, obnoxious, or impenetrable for new players, or to bounce people away from the game in frustration before it truly sinks its teeth into them. Because for many years, Monster Hunter had that reputation, and still does to some extent. And it has kept people away from even trying it in the first place. They think they know what the game is, but you and I know they probably have a misguided opinion of it that we have to try and get them past it. Because it's a silly thing for a fandom to want, to try and gatekeep a game like that, to want it to be too difficult for new players to have fun. Because the larger the player base is, the more life this game and this series gets to have. So instead of whining about not feeling properly challenged in the earlier game, lamenting that the game is quote-unquote too easy now, I'll be looking to help newbies. Not to teach them the fights, but to help teach them how to learn the fights for themselves, because that's the most rewarding way to play. And if I, personally, feel a tinge of tedium with how easy the early monsters are to me, I'll start pulling in some challenge rules. Maybe I'll do no mixed armor sets, forcing me into a more interesting range of armor skill possibilities. Maybe I'll do no armor rank upgrades at all, at least until high rank. Or maybe no armor at all. Perhaps I'll do a hunger run and do a chunk of the game without any food buffs or health or stamina boosts. Or maybe I'll do a gatherer run where I leave camp with completely empty pockets and only use whatever potions and whatnot I can gather and craft while in the field for that particular hunt. Been meaning to give that one a go. Haven't tried that particular quirky little rule yet. I mean, think about that. If you can only gather 3 or 4 potions before you reach a monster and you can't gather enough honey for enough max potions, that's going to change the way you play. You're going to have a lot more restrictions on how careless you can be and how confident you feel in being able to heal through damage and stuff like that, There are so many ways to organically make the game more challenging for an experienced hunter without even breaking immersion. So I would strongly suggest, if you're feeling too cocky about the difficulty, put your zenny where your mouth is and carve out your own challenge. I once did a run through Base Rise where I wasn't allowed to move on from a single monster, each new monster you fought, you couldn't fight the next monster until I had crafted its full armor set and one of its weapons. And then I had to use that set and that weapon to fight the next monster and repeat that cycle. I called it the Fashion First run because, I was always in a matched set. It looked good. No weird visual disasters of, mixed sets, pre-layered armor unlocks. And it was a fun way to slow down the early burn of even low-rank progress. And occasionally it meant for really bad matchups, with weapons with really crappy sharpness on monsters I really needed it on, or, poor elemental or status matchups, things like that. But mostly it was about just slowing down and really soaking in the early game instead of feeling like you were just burning through it way too easily and way too fast. So that's another possibility for you to consider. It's certainly one of the things I'm actually considering for myself for my first Wilds playthrough. Crafting a full set of armor and, at least one of the weapons for every new monster I encounter. At least for the low rank stuff. This particular rule set can get kind of tedious once you get to high rank. Just warning you. So yeah, anyway, I guess we'll see soon enough how the game shakes out. It's just the end of the month. It's just rushing up on us. So we'll soon know how progress feels for experienced hunters and newbies alike. Please do let me know in the down below what your experiences in the past have been like on this stuff. What was your first playthrough like? What was your first wall? And have you done any replays? Did you use special rule sets and stuff? How do they make you feel? Well, thanks for watching. I am Blunty. We'll catch you next time. And thank you to the patrons.